Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is Shadow at Night. It is Thursday, June the 26th, 2025. On the show tonight, independent, not always independent, but he's now an independent MLA for Peace River North in British Columbia. Jordan Kealy joins the show tonight. We're going to talk about, Universal Ostrich Farm, because he's a big supporter of what's going on there, and CFIA wanting to come and cull 400 ostriches. He's not a big supporter of that. He's a big supporter of the farm defending their rights to test these ostriches and maybe come up with a different diagnosis than what CFIA came up with from 2 PCR tests back in December. I believe it's 160 days and counting that these ostriches have been perfectly healthy and happy. And we're going to talk a bit about that, but also Jordan left the Conservative Party of British Columbia back in March, I think it was. He's going to clarify everything for us tonight based upon corruption inside the party. And this is alarming for Conservatives, not just in British Columbia, but all across the country, because while Conservatives continue infighting and being unable to unite ideas, or at least spend time together in a big tent, the Marxists are running wild, and they're making deals with China. They're making fairy deals in BC with China. They're allowing the Marxist agenda to go unchecked while we get our SHIT together, and we need to get it together quickly because we're in Agenda 2030, man, and time is coming. Also, interestingly, Jordan is an honest guy. He's not a politician. You know, when you hear the term politician, you think of some greasy guy, hair slicked back, talking in metaphors or talking points, never being honest, or maybe kind of sort of being honest and dropping some truth here and there, but not really all the time. You don't get the feeling of believability from somebody like that. And that is the idea we have of politicians. So I'm hesitant to call Jordan the politician because he just doesn't come across like politician. I just say honest man working for the people. So we're going to bring Jordan Kealy on in just a second. The Shadow at Night live stream, as always, is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com.
Silver is amazing. It has several natural health benefits, and it's been used for hundreds of years for health and healing. That's the main reason they made silverware from silver. But seriously, this nano silver from Silverceuticals is the best and safest silver you can find. There are hundreds of studies and reports on it. I've read some of the studies myself, and it's mind-blowing. One of the things that sets Silverceuticals apart is that it washes out of your body in 24 hours. No silver buildup and no turning blue. And it won't even harm the good bacteria your body needs. It's so effective they can use very small concentrations of silver, like 10 and 32 parts per million, and still outperform other silvers that have up to 3,000 parts per million. It's safer and more effective at the same time. It is an incredibly small particle that is small enough to work through your body, but big enough not to fall out of suspension. They infuse it into almost all of their products. It works in facial serums, toothpaste, gels, and even gummies that work to help your immune system.
Oh my God, it's nano silver. It must be from Pfizer. It's meant to kill us. No, I've heard that from people. Just like I've heard these erroneous statements about the ostrich farm. And let me ask you a question. How do you think penicillin was discovered? There are some honest scientists out there working on good things, and Canada Nano Silver is a great product. These are nano silver particles. Yes, that's true. That means they're very small, but they're not robots. They are not operating systems. They are designed to help clean out your system. For example, I had an ingrown hair right here, like unsightly teenage acne for a 60-year-old man. Not cool, right? And it was a bad one. And I put the silver on for a couple of days, gone. Same with cuts, same with scrapes. I've had that in the last 5 years. You put the silver on and it just goes away. All of the scientific information regarding Canada Nano Silver is on the webpage, CanadaNanoSilver.com. Great facial serum, immune gummies, skin cream, toothpaste. They've got it all. Go check out the products, and you can get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab there. And if you want to be a retailer of this awesome stuff, get a hold of them as well. CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Hello, Michael, watching in Brampton tonight. Carla is watching in Calgary. Hello, Janet, Ellen, on Vancouver Island. Vicky is watching in Nova Scotia. Hello, Derek, watching in Kamloops. Tracy watching in Gilbert, Arizona tonight. Donnie is watching in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia. Darlene in Cartwright, Manitoba. Donald is watching from Carstairs, Alberta. Hello, Chris, watching. That's Old McDonald, by the way. Old McDonald is watching in northern New York State. Regina's watching in Arizona tonight. Hello, Gerald, watching in Wild Oaks RV Park in Richer, Manitoba. Eddie is watching tonight. Sherry's in Winnipeg. Hello, Dan. Rita watching in Woodbridge, Ontario. Lan is watching from Quesnel, BC. Leanne in Langley. Kathy is watching in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. And over on Rumble, what do we got here? Jimmy James in Calgary. By Lennox watching in Swift Current. Patricia is watching in Cornwall, Ontario. Wherever you happen to be watching tonight, you guys, on whatever platform you're watching on, get it out there. Like and share. People need to hear this information. It's not gloom and doom. And if it is, we'll give you solutions towards the end of it. You just got to be patient. Jordan Kealy, independent MLA for Peace River North in British Columbia, joins the show right after this break. Hello, Jordan. How are you? Thank you for joining the show tonight on such short notice. Appreciate it.
I'm doing good. Thank you very much for having me. It sounds like you got a lot of friends out there when I'm listening to all the different places, and I believe the one place is pronounced Quinnell.
Yeah, you know, I have that thing every time I say it, and I always remember the wrong one.
No worries. That's
Quinnell.
You know, the way that some of the names are getting changed in British Columbia, they're getting harder and harder to pronounce too. So we'll see.
Isn't there a new bridge in Vancouver they're renaming now?
Yeah, there's bridges, there's parks, there's certain road names. It would be difficult if you live on a certain road name and you have to try and input certain things into your computer when it comes to the name of the road street. You can't even find where to find that on your keyboard.
Yeah, it's. I could have sworn I read something about that the other day, and I thought I'll never be able to pronounce this, so there's no point in even bringing it up on the show. So let me ask you first. Let's talk about Universal Ostrich Farm. We were having a good conversation about it before the show began tonight. You've spent some time on the farm. You've met Katie and Karen and the family, and so have I. What were your impressions of the situation that they're in and the people who are in it?
Well, I'll start off in the first place of why I chose to get involved was that it really seemed like no politician wanted to touch it. And because of the current status that it's in with the CFIA and the coal process, that farmers are scared that supply management will come after them as well.
Yeah.
And the effects that they lobby with the federal government and the CFIA and the effects that can have. And right now, a lot of really big scale farms, commercial farms, industrial farms, they can deal with the coal orders and having to restart. But right now, there is nobody lobbying for the smaller farmers. That in order to actually lobby to the legislature, you have to be a registered lobbyist. Well, Katie's not a lobbyist.
No.
I've got a farm myself. Before politics, I'm not a registered lobbyist. So when it comes to trying to get the word out and try and figure out ways to change or how to stand up to the system, there's not a lot of avenues. So when I saw Katie and her mom and what was happening, I was really trying to think of a way to help. And especially, I heard about it when I was in the Conservative Party, and I was the agriculture critic with Ian Patton. And he advised me not to touch it because he was worried about what supply management would say. And so he really didn't say much at all. And that's where, once I became an independent, I realized that I could be the critic of anything I want. And this is one of those things where, even though it's out of my region, This avian flu, the way that they're testing for it, the way that it can spread, it can cross over so many different animal species. So it's not just ostriches, it's chickens, turkeys, ducks, geese. You've got wild birds that spread it. You've got cows that it could go to, dairy cows that it could go to. You've got horses that it could go to. They could even come after your dog and your cat.
Yeah, well, we had Dr. Stephen Pellick on last week or the week before, and he was talking about the very unlikely transference to other species, especially human beings, right? I mean, he said, look, I mean, we've had one case of human H5. I think it was just H5, not H5N1, just H5. That young lady felt like she had a cold for about a week. She went to the farm herself, I believe, and met with Kealy and Karen. And so, you know, highly unlikely. And when you hear that from a respected scientist who's been working in the field for 30, 35 years, you kind of go, okay, well, you know what? Dude knows what he's talking about, obviously. And so CFIA comes in, they do 2 PCR tests back in December. PCR tests. And everybody watching the show right now, and everybody who will watch this show right now, knows what the PCR test is because of the COVID days. So they do the PCR test on 2 dead birds, and they come up with a positive H5. Katie tells me 41 minutes after that, before they even got the N1 diagnosis, because it hadn't gone to the lab in Winnipeg yet, the cull order came in. Yeah. Right. So based upon these ridiculous tests where you can pretty much find anything if you run it at a high enough cycle rate, they ordered 400 ostriches to be killed. And now they say, I'm sorry, but you can't do any of your own testing. And if you do, per test, you'll wind up with a $200,000 fine and possible time in jail, which is absolutely outrageous, don't you think?
Correct. And they rule that with an iron fist, because going back a long time ago, when you had originally why they brought in those quarantine and cull orders, that was pretty much going back to when BSE was happening, mad cow disease with cows, and that they had to isolate, quarantine, and cull them as quick as possible. They also had those procedures put in place to make it very difficult for the farmers to be able to fight against the system. So that it really just came in with a giant iron fist, and they pretty much got their way with no matter what happened. Well, in this scenario, we're seeing irregularities when you talk about the testing, and I'm hoping that the new evidence, or the evidence that's in place when it comes to going back east to challenge this in the court system, that Katie's able to take that there. But what really worried me was that the way that they're doing this testing, and the way that this avian flu could spread, the way that they're doing the testing, it can affect farmers all over North America. And right now, the U.S. has recognized that fact as well. And that it's not something that you can just quarantine and cull everything. That it's something that we have to work with going forward and find different ways to progress and advance ourselves to protect farmers.
Isn't there supposed to be other measures to be taken before they go to the final stamp out order? That's the last resort, from what I understand.
There are other measures, but I think that going straight to the cull is their primary objective of how they try and approach this. And I believe that other options could be in place, especially when you look at it's over 170 days now that they've been quarantined, and the birds are still healthy, and they should be tested, and it'll prove that there's no reason to kill them. But right now, if they get them tested, they're looking at huge fines, and it's not realistic. And this is one of the reasons why I got involved in the first place, was to try and give Katie a little bit of an extra voice, to try and help challenge this. And that's why I got her into the legislature during question period, and to meet with the agriculture minister, was to start this. And now that the federal government has their election done and their ministries in place, we need to put as much pressure on the MPs to help support this, that this system is old, it's outdated, and that we can do better. And that the future of farming is something that we have to protect. That if you look throughout the past 2 census periods, which was 4 years, and then 4 years before that, 15% of farms are disappearing.
That's the plan.
Farmers, like these farms, they're not used for human consumption, but without farmers, we have no food.
That is the plan from the United Nations, and why Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland in the United States, and there are large conglomerates buying up the farmland in Canada, based out of Toronto, based out of New York, and based out of Brussels, from what I'm understanding in the research I've been doing. And I know that the culls have been going up and up and up steadily on average since 2003, which I find remarkable. Only now are we starting to discover it. At least it's becoming more of a public attention thing than it ever has been, thanks to the ostrich farm. But we're hearing about, like, once a week, the CFIA seems to be discovering there's a pigeon farmer in Chilliwack who is going to have all of his birds culled. There was a woman in Burton, British Columbia, who had all of her chickens culled last year. Saskatchewan with, what was it? Anthrax has been found. Anthrax, for goodness sakes. I mean, you're a farmer. Have you heard of this being found in Canada?
Not the anthrax scenario, but I believe that when it comes to regulations, that we need to keep the UN out of our business in Canada.
Yeah.
When it comes to our legislation that we put through and our acts and our laws, they need to be developed by the federal government or the provincial government to match what we need as Canadians. So if these governments want to be all elbows up and that they're here to do what's best for us, well, then we need to start focusing on our own economy. And right now, if we've got farmers that are going out of business, like even I'm contemplating about having to fold up just because of the droughts that we're going through. So if it's not Mother Nature coming after us, it's the giant corporations that'll scoop all the money out of it, or it'll be the government trying to control every aspect of it, wanting you to register your dugout.
Yeah.
As if you're using it for a large commercial use or industrial application, where it's getting ridiculous, and the government needs to butt out of our lives.
I absolutely agree. I want to talk about what's going on in the Conservative Party of British Columbia right now. John Rustad is under fire. He is firing back at several different MLAs who have been accusing him of rigging the AGM back in March. I think it was on Vancouver Island in Nanaimo. But first, Jordan, you don't seem like the typical politician. By the way, for those of you just getting here right now, Jordan is the MLA for Peace River North in British Columbia, formerly a Conservative MP, but now independent, left the party back in March, I believe it was, right?
Correct.
Why did you get into politics in the first place? You had a farm going, you had another career going on, mechanic, I believe. What made you get into politics?
You're right about that. I'm a farmer and mechanic. I don't even like calling myself a politician. When you see the state of politics that it is right now, I think it's disgusting. And I think that we should have a better standard and a higher moral code that we live by. But that just seems the way that things are changing nowadays. So I'll come straight out that when the pandemic happened, my dad got sick. I was on my farm, and when I went down to go and see him, he had no immune system, and he got the Moderna shot. He fell sick within 3 days and was in a lot of pain, and it got worse very quickly. I got down as soon as I could to see him, and he was on 3 different painkillers, fentanyl, morphine, and another one. And it actually got to the point where they did scans. They said that they couldn't talk to him. And then so I went back home onto the farm because I've got animals to take care of. And when I finally did hear a month later from an oncologist, it took a month for them to actually read his scans. They said that he had 4 different types of cancer, all stage 4. By the time I got down there, lo and behold, being on the farm, I never bothered getting vaccinated. So I wasn't allowed into the hospital when I got there. And when him and my mom decided to choose MAID for him because they couldn't treat his pain anymore, I was 8 stories down in the parking lot while the rest of my family was up there watching him die.
I'm so sorry to hear that, man. That is
so when they strip away a piece of your humanity, for 5 months I wasn't in a very good place. And then the mechanic that's in me turned around and said, well, like, how do I fix this? What do we do to try and make this better? There's so much disarray from COVID. There's nurses getting fired. There's doctors that are leaving. I would really try to focus on what I could do to make things better. And local governments came up for election, and I thought, well, the reason that I couldn't get into the hospital was political. That was something that the government put in place to make it so that I couldn't see my father that was dying. So I became a regional director, and I did that for 2 years for the PRD in my region. And it was interesting to sit on a board with 8 municipal board directors and then 4 regional, and to figure out how local politics works. And there were some things where I actually really realized that I figured out ways to fix things. And then there was an opportunity that I could become a candidate for the Conservative Party. I turned around, I told John no twice, that I hated party politics.
You're talking about John Rustad here. For people watching it in other parts of the country, John Rustad is the leader of the Conservative Party of BC. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No problem. So one of the nice things about local politics is that you're on a council, you're on a board, you do what you can best to let democracy work, to figure out what's best for your people. Well, in a party system, it's never the case. It's so polarized. Most of the time, there's bureaucracy involved that it never works out good. But we had an opportunity with the Conservative Party where, after the Emergencies Act got changed in British Columbia, they made it so then people could forcibly be removed from their properties. And I said, that's it. I'll put my name in. I've got to try something better to make a difference at the provincial level. The whole reason I got into politics was try and make the biggest change I can and find the fixes that I can. So when I got into the party, it looked like a Conservative Party. The policies in place, that John talked like a Conservative, but I always kind of had my reservations a little bit because he was being a Liberal for so long. And the biggest thing about we've had the Liberal Party in BC for quite a while, but never a Conservative Party, really. I wanted the Conservative Party, and why I was passionate about it was that it seemed like it would actually give the North what it needed. Whereas as soon as it starts turning Liberal, it focuses all of its attention on the Lower Mainland and the voters that it can capture down there.
Yeah,
and we always get left out in the North. They rape and pillage every resource in the North, and we get very little back.
Yeah, that sounds like Manitoba. It's interesting. Jordan and I were having a conversation on the phone this afternoon, and there was a lot of similarities between Manitoba and BC politically, and just regionally as well, right? Like, there's one center of population pretty much, and then everybody else has to pay for that center of population. In BC, the population is much larger, obviously, and there are other cities like Victoria and Kamloops and Kelowna, Vernon, all of the cities all across BC who are probably more common sense leaning, I'm going to suppose. And I don't even want to say right leaning or left leaning anymore, because, I think that political spectrum has kind of gone out the window. But let me ask you, for those people that don't know, and I've covered this since the beginning, and I was very happy to see BC finally get a Conservative Party a couple of years ago. I didn't know much about John Rustad, but as you mentioned, he spent years and years as a Liberal, and then the Liberal Party had to change their name to, what were they called? BC United. Yeah, BC United. And then they folded their tent because they were sinking in the polls and the Conservatives were rising. But the Conservative Party, as it is right now anyway, is a mishmash of former Liberals and possible more right-leaning people, maybe reform-minded people. Is that correct? Or
well, the Liberal Party has always turned around and says that they're Liberal, but they've got Conservatives in it. So the candidate that we'd have in our region he'd say he's Conservative, and it would capitalize to that. The Liberal Party's been losing traction for a long time now. And they did their leadership race, and Kevin Falcon got in, and they did BC United with the name change, and it flopped. Him as a leader flopped as well. They became heavily in debt. And at that point, when they got heavily in debt, and they realized that they were sinking. This is about 8 months into my campaign as a Conservative candidate. We were doing pretty good. And then the party started having talks with BC United about folding BC United, or having it go into hiatus, and then bringing over these Liberals. And it all of a sudden became this big tent party that John called it. And I never signed up for a big tent party. I signed up for a Conservative party.
Right.
The policies were all Conservative. Like what they won on, or what they did in the election, that was with a Conservative platform. That wasn't a Liberal platform.
Yeah.
People wanted Conservative change to happen. They wanted the polarity in the province to swing, to try and counteract the socialism that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Instead, what we've now got is a party that's almost half and half for Liberal and Conservatives in it. There's this big tent. There's no communication. While I was in it, the MLAs just were fighting back and forth. Some of the meetings, the caucus meetings, they're caucus confidentiality in place. So it makes it so if I talk about it, I can pretty much get sued. So I had to be very careful with what I'd say, but it got to the point where I always said that I'd never be whipped, and I told John that I wouldn't be whipped. I'd do what's best for my region first and foremost. And he said, yeah, that's great. Well, what's the first thing that they do to Dallas Brody when they disagree with her? They even gave her permission to talk about the First Nations, and when it came to the unmarked graves. When it became a hot topic, they asked her to take it down. When she said no, that's pretty much where they kicked her out of the party. Well, as soon as you kick somebody out of the party, that's the most extreme form of whipping that you can do. And it's it just confirmed John's the biggest hypocrite in the world. That's exactly what happened to him.
Yeah.
And he's saying that he's not going to do that to others. So that's exactly what he did to Dallas. So when I saw this, and in the meeting, I confronted leadership, and I said, John, this is your big tent party. What are you going to do to control this? Nothing. Absolute crickets. So then I thought, well, what am I supposed to do if these Liberals that have come over to this party get all the speaking time, pretty much get almost all the question period to ask their questions? It seemed like the Liberal infrastructure and stakeholders were coming in and taking over at the same time, the bureaucrats in behind the scenes, and that they were just pushing the Conservatives out. At that point there, when they kicked Dallas out, I pretty much said, this is not the party that I joined. I am not becoming a Liberal, and I'm not changing who I am. And that's where I decided to leave the party. Tara was the same way that she decided to leave the party as well.
Tara
Armstrong. And
right.
For her, I think a lot of us, we really saw how rigged the AGM was, of how they conducted it.
Yeah, I want to get into the AGM in just a second, because I understand that was like a turning point for many, many people when it came out what Rustad did. And there was a lot of people who saw what he did and were holding that secret. They didn't want to talk publicly about it, or they said, I didn't see nothing, which was a lie in many cases. And the people who were there absolutely know that it's a lie. But let me ask you, I mean, you've described it fairly well, but how rigid, because there are other provinces, there's federal politics. How rigid is it? And I've tried to get other politicians on the show before, and I've had a couple, but they're former politicians. They're guys who have been in office and now they're retired. How difficult is it to be able to speak out on your own when you're a member of a party, no matter what party it is?
I don't know. I think I've been in the news plenty lately.
Well, you have. But, I mean, you're
independents. I think we've done a pretty good job of getting our voices heard better than we were in the Conservative Party.
No, I don't disagree. But, I mean, why don't other members just stand up more and say, you know what, I'm not listening to this crap. I'm going to say what I feel. I mean, that's what it should be. Many people believe that. And yet, for some reason, is it they're trying to climb the ladder of the party to maybe become a minister should their party win power one day?
I'm here to try and fix things. I'm not here for status. I'm not here for paycheck. I'm not here to be a career politician. I'm here to try and get shit done.
Yeah.
When it comes to the rest of the party and the politicians that are in it, I can't speak for them, but the parties themselves put a lot of parameters in place to control the MLAs. and to make it so then they stay in line with the party. Whether or not it's having evidence on them, like John talks about blackmail, well, that can work the same way inside the party so that you control your own MLAs. You've got handlers within the system. You've got staff. They'll print off scripts for everything that you're reading. Most of the time when you look at question period, people are reading off a piece of paper that's scripted directly for them that they've never even read before in some cases.
Let me ask you, you said handlers. The party has got handlers. What do you mean by that? Are these bureaucrats? Are these party staffers?
They're party staffers.
And what do they do? Like they're supposed to handle ministers. They're supposed to tell them what to say. They answer phone calls. They're like their protector, their watchdog kind of thing.
So I can't speak for on the NDP side of it, but within the Conservative Party, you can see very clearly that there's senior staff that is their primary role that they do is for keeping the party in line. One of the things that you'll see them do is script a letter similar to the 6 pages that John put out or supposedly that he put out to his caucus, and then it got leaked. That's another form of how they try and control their MLAs, to turn around and say to their MLAs, the only reason you ever got elected is because of the party, not because of you. You don't matter. It's the party that got you elected. Well, I call bullshit on that. I really think that we need to go back to a system of where we actually had independents before parties, where the independents actually focused on their regions. And when you go to the legislature, you now have 93 politicians that are focused on the best interests of their regions as well as the whole province, not what party bureaucracy forces them to do, not what the whip tells you. This is how you have to vote. You have to be here for this. You have to vote this way. That's one of the main forms of controlling and handling the MLAs are the whips. And John said he'd never whip his MLAs. Well, he's very clearly doing it now.
So let's go back to the AGM back in Nanaimo in March. What happened there exactly?
So the AGM, that was the first one I've ever been to before, and halfway through it, I was spellbound at what happened as to how things were controlled. But through the bylaws, you're not supposed to conduct it in a biased manner at all towards the leader. It's supposed to be democracy of who gets voted into what positions. We clearly saw that John had his preferred slate that he picked, that he endorsed. Are
we talking about a cabinet here, Jordan, or are we talking about just people in different regions being in different?
This is for the board of the party.
Okay.
When it came to those elected positions. So there's a lot of people that came to the AGM. Some were just there as members or delegates and voting members. There were also a lot that from riding associations that normally your riding association you'd be allowed to have 10 people come as well as yourself as the MLA. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of riding associations where their delegates never got approved. And instead, we saw a lot of voting members turn up at the actual AGM and filled in for other ridings that never should have happened. And it was part of that was a fight. I think there was close to 200 people that wanted to be able to go to the AGM as voting delegates that couldn't. We also saw a large number of people that got trucked in there by bus. That there hasn't been clear evidence from the party showing exactly who they were. What riding did they come from? Did they pay? Were they a previous member in good standing in order to be able to vote?
Now, this is the rumor, and I can't say for sure unless you can, of 100 South Asian men being bussed in, and later we heard that they were bribed to come in, paid $100 each or whatever it was by Rustad to vote a certain way, the way that he wanted them to vote.
Well, I've sat in the meeting the one time where I think Dallas mentioned it as well about that John used the term Indo-Paki. That came direct from John's lips. And then at first when Dallas and I had heard that, it was about 7 months before, or actually, no, sorry, about 6 months before that John had used that term. We then saw it at the AGM where these people came in by bus They weren't familiar to a lot of the people that were there. And then this happened, and then we also had senior staff, executive staff, that told us that this happened. Now, what we were calling out for was for there to be a third party investigation into this. Get the party to open their books. They should be following the Societies Act and come clean about what actually happened. That's what should happen in a proper scenario, is that you have an audit like that take place. I shouldn't have to go and try and interrogate staff or talk to other.
We seem to have lost Jordan for a second. He's frozen on screen. Hopefully this, if Jordan,
can you hear me?
Yeah, if you can just go back 7 to 8 seconds,
Okay.
and start again where you were.
Sure. Yeah. So when it came to when we saw everything that was going wrong, when it came to the AGM, the way that it was being chaired, it was being rushed so fast. It's the 44 motions that were put forward to look into different ways to change the Constitution or bylaws. Those got pushed aside, and it got turned into an omnibus, and then they shoved it through as well. We saw people that had questions at the microphones, and the party was getting MLAs to pretty much squash their opinions and not letting them really have the time to talk.
Wow.
We saw ballots that had preferential John's pick that was on them for his person, and then for the other 3 people, they said independent, even though they were Conservative Party members. One of them, for my campaign manager, for example, she wanted to be a secretary for the party. They called her an independent on the ballot. Well, I'm sorry, when you're on that ballot, like there's people's names on there, and that's it. They're all Conservative Party members. There's not supposed to be any sort of bias. These are all things that happened during that AGM that had a lot of people very upset, and I don't blame them. Is it my job to do an investigation into it? No. That's why I was calling for a third-party investigation to look into it, and that it should be looked into, how the money was handled in that scenario as well.
Is that overseen by Elections BC, Jordan, or is that something that you would have to do independently, privately?
That was, I know that when it came to the changes to the Constitution and the bylaws, those have to go through, I just slipped my tongue, or just missed it for a second there. Through the Societies Act.
Okay.
Isn't it where those changes have to get registered?
Yeah.
That it involves that if you do challenge it that way, involves a lengthy and expensive court case. And I think that was one of the troubles for people to be able to afford that. And that's one of the reasons why, as the 3 of us independents, when we were at the legislature, we brought forward some of this information, and we wanted people to bring forward information, and that they could try and somebody could start that court challenge. But I think that when it comes to the whole blackmail scenario.
Now, what is this scenario? Is this Rustad accusing you and others of blackmailing him? Is that what that is?
So after we tried to get John to air his dirty laundry over the AGM, that's where he sent out to his caucus members a 6-page letter. And in there, it referenced the 3 independents. And
we'll wait just a few seconds, and hopefully he's.
I don't know either. That's a criminal somebody.
Hang on a minute. You vanished again. So go back 10 seconds. Push rewind. Go back 10 seconds, please.
So sorry about that. When it comes
right.
to accusing somebody in that 6-page letter, it was accusing myself or the other 2 independent MLAs at the time, or their staff, of blackmailing their staff with information, trying to get information. And For John to make that accusation, that's a criminal offense. And that's where I came up. I didn't blackmail anybody. I have no problems talking to the RCMP.
Right.
And then if he doesn't have that evidence, well, then that's a crime to accuse somebody of that. And
no, dude, we're getting to the good parts here. We're getting to the good parts of this interview, this discussion, and you're freezing on us. Are you working on a Wi-Fi, or is somebody else using the Wi-Fi in the house?
It's Wi-Fi. It's in my office. I'm all by myself.
All right. Well, we'll just keep going there, and hopefully it resolves itself. I want to ask you this. John Rustad, who is this guy? I mean, when I first saw this guy emerge as the leader of the BC Conservative Party a couple of years ago, to me, he seemed like a reasonable guy. He looks like a conservative. He was talking conservative. As you point out, the party was using conservative, common sense talking points and winning a huge following in the province, to the point where we thought the Conservatives were going to win the election. Turns out they didn't. And again, there could be all kinds of election manipulation that we don't know about. I think there's one seat that's still in dispute. But is he a good guy?
Well, he seems like a good guy, but he's a politician. Like he's a career politician.
Maybe I phrased that wrong. There's so many people who, and I guess I count myself as one of them, Jordan, who believe that people are generally good. But when you get into the world of politics, there are people that will do things that normal people, average people, would never even dream of doing. Am I right about that?
You're completely right about that. I think that John's a liberal through and through. He came from a failed Liberal Party. He was looking for an out, and he found a Conservative Party. And he said what he needed to get Conservative supporters to build his base. And then once it got big enough, that is where he turned back to the Liberals. And he wants his big tent, and he wants to go further and further that direction. We saw that just with his caucus meeting yesterday, of him getting Gordon Campbell to come in and talk to people in his caucus, his MLAs in his caucus. So if you have the ex-premier that's a Liberal coming in and influencing your MLAs, well, I'd say that you're pretty liberal. And it's when it comes to being a good person, I believe that Liberal had a driving under the influence as well. So I don't know. Maybe they'll get Christy Clark next and close down a bridge and do yoga or something and teach them that. But myself personally, I'd rather focus on some of the big issues that we have with health and crime and drugs. But going back to that AGM and the blackmail, if John's going to possibly accuse me of blackmail, he better have evidence. Otherwise, he's falsely slandering me. He's committing a crime, and that's where David Eby came out and called John on it and said, if you don't go to the RCMP with the evidence, then we'll get the RCMP to come to you. And what did John do? Oh, he changed his story. He said, oh, sorry, I said the wrong word.
So he's a wormy politician. That's
right.
What he is. He's certainly not a leader. And I guess what did he spend? 20 years, as you say, as a backbench Liberal MLA with no real responsibility in the Liberal Party whatsoever.
He's held minister roles within the Liberal Party before, but he really will just do whatever he has to get through politics. There's a lot of issues that we have now that are because of him.
So you released this statement yesterday, and you say, today I'm calling on John Rustad to step down as leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia for the good of British Columbians. If he stays in charge, he will run this party into the ground. In fact, he's already going down that path. He's building on a weak foundation that he created, and it's cracking. Not one, not two, but 3 MLAs have already left his caucus. His own team is falling apart under his watch. And then you go on to talk about the AGM, and then you suggest that you would step forward and run for leader of the party should there become a vacuum at that position. Let's talk about the party itself now. This afternoon on the phone, you said to me that how many MLAs are there? 45, is it?
In the Conservative Party right now?
42, maybe.
It's yes. Yeah.
Okay, so there were more Liberals than there were actual Conservative members of the Conservative Party.
So at the time when I was sitting in the caucus meeting before I left, I was counting about 24 Liberals that were within the party, and then 20 Conservatives. So I knew that there was a balance that was already put in place by the selection process of the party to have more Liberals within that caucus than Conservatives. And then when the three of us left the party, that's where there was only 17 Conservatives.
So with only 17 Conservatives in that party, you're outnumbered by Liberals. And does this mean the party needs to split? Or does this mean that a new leader is necessary to be able to get rid of these Liberals and elect actual Conservatives into their positions? And if so, how could that be done?
Well, ultimately, we want a really strong leader that can help defeat the NDP. And if that's the scenario, then we need one party to pretty much have that strong leader to be able to beat the NDP in the next election. Now, if we've got a weak leader and the caucus is divided, then you can see that that you could have the Liberals split off and go to the Centre BC party that got started just a little while ago.
Now, what is that? Is that a new Liberal party?
It's called Centre BC. It's a previous BC United MLA that started that party.
Obviously.
And then you've got, this is what happens when you don't have a strong leader. You're going to have fractions break, and you're going to have the splitting of the vote that they say that can happen, and it makes it very difficult for us to be able to beat the other spectrum, the NDP, because right now between them and the Greens, they've got the agreement together that they're controlling the House right now.
Interestingly, the Greens only have those 2 seats, and yet way too much power because of those 2 seats. Usually, it's interesting when we see NDP and Liberals fighting over territory. That means they split their vote, and there's more votes for Conservatives. But because the NDP has been the establishment party in British Columbia for so long, maybe that's a little bit reversed. You've got Centre BC, and then there's that other party called One BC, correct?
Correct. One BC was started by Dallas Brody. She's the current leader with Tara Armstrong. So
then there's BC Strong, which is the party that our friend James has put together, James Davison and Marcella Desjardins. Is that something that's going to be able to make a mark? I know that they have a lot of support down there in the Abbotsford area.
Well, there's quite a few other parties that.
You mean there's more than 3 new parties? Centre BC, One BC, BC Strong. There's still the Conservative Party. Yeah. Is BC United still a going concern, or are they like defunct now?
BC United is on hiatus right now. Kevin Falcon is still the leader of it, but I think right now the focus is that the reason that I didn't join One BC was because I didn't want to rush into making these decisions. That we have to focus on doing what's best for British Columbia with a party or trying to fight for that scenario. I myself personally, we just got elected in October.
Yeah.
I'm figuring out all of my duties and roles as an MLA and being able to help my constituents in the best ability possible.
Are you restricted as an independent? Do you have less speaking time?
Independents do have less time, and I think that's something that the legislature should look at to actually try and make a difference. Because right now, I was only getting one question during question period once every 3 weeks, whereas the NDP had 2 people and they were getting a question every day.
Yeah.
So it's not balanced. That there should be change to how the independents work.
But this is the party system, though, right? Like, and when you go against the party, you're right when you said earlier that each constituency needs to be represented fairly in the legislature or the House of Commons, wherever they're elected to. And in a party system, you just can't achieve that. I understand that with 93 disparate voices, each person representing a different community across the province, you may not get a lot of agreement. But as you say, this would take a fantastic leader to be able to build consensus, not necessarily with the same people on every issue, right?
And the tough thing, too, is that the rural-urban divide keeps on growing.
Yeah.
The population centers keep on getting bigger and bigger. We see that in the States as well. And trying to...
Smart cities, 15 minutes city.
Yeah. And it makes it a lot more difficult. And I think that's where we need electoral reforms put in place, where we can try and correct that scenario. So we don't, in BC, we have literally 1% of the landmass that controls the whole province.
Yep.
And normally the premiers that are in place don't even know anything about the rest of BC, really.
I got to tell you, I was there just recently, like I was talking about earlier in the show tonight. And when I first I told you this on the phone this afternoon, I first drove into BC, and it had been a long time since I'd been there. I'm driving along the Trans-Canada. I passed by Field. I got through Golden, and I started seeing the big mountains. And it's like, wow, man, this is so beautiful. And the people who live here, because they're there every day, they take it for granted a bit. And I just thought to myself, this province is too beautiful to be run by Marxists. They're going to run it right into the ground. They're going to take all of this away from us if we don't find a way to stop them. And so there are people who want to stand up like yourself, Jordan, and speak out against all of the nonsense that they're trying to pull off. David Eby, I think he's China-controlled personally, and I think that that's been revealed by Sam from the Bureau on Substack repeatedly. And the ferry deal that he just signed is evidence of that, as far as I'm concerned. Like, you're going to build 4 new ferries and give the contract to China? What the hell's the matter with you? We do have Canadians that could do that work, and that's only one example of it, not to mention all the fentanyl pouring in through the ports in the Lower Mainland. But I don't want to get too divergent on what we're talking about here.
But
go ahead.
The example that you gave about the ferries, that's a perfect example of our globalized system that we have. And our country for the past 30 years has just been allowing that globalized system to grow stronger. Whereas with those ferries, we could start new shipyards. It may cost more to do it, but at least we're building our own infrastructure for all of our resources, the mines, smelters. When it comes to forestry, you look at the sawmills, the OSB plants, that all of this other infrastructure can be enhanced. But that's all this government does, is that they talk about, we're Team Canada, we're elbows up. We're going to do what's best. Well, those ferries, they just did what isn't best. That could have been billions of dollars going back into our own infrastructure by investing that money.
Wasn't Eby, I think he was the most extreme premier on this Team Canada train when he started taking American booze off the shelves, but only if it was from a red state, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what he said? Like an idiot.
He really didn't like that Kentucky bourbon, even though it really didn't make any difference. But the powers that they've given themselves with the recent bills that they put in place completely sidestep democracy.
Yeah.
Especially Bill 7, that gave them a lot of very, very strong powers to be able to do things without even being in legislature.
And, for a guy with only a 2-seat majority, barely, like skin of the teeth majority, that's, making a big assumption that all of the people of that province are absolutely 100% behind him if he can go ahead and skirt the legislature and create laws that he sees fit. It's like the Carney Liberals in Bill 5, right? Or C5. They want to be able to rub out any law that they feel is going to get in their way when it comes to development projects that they feel are in the best interests of Canada, or just create new laws. And
even if the Greens vote against them, they still win.
Because they have
47 to 46.
Yeah.
So when it comes to them getting their way, they made it clear that they're not going to push for a snap election, that they're winning these votes already. So the way that we have to look at things now is that what can we do best for the next election to try and fight the NDP. Now, what I do as an independent, I like to make my decisions to where they're strategic, they're smart, and where I believe that I can make the biggest change possible, where I can actually find the fixes. I'm not here to just talk. I believe that happens in politics way too much, and most of the time it's not even true. So to try and figure out the right way going forward is what I'm going to be looking at. So as an independent, I don't take it lightly when I turn around and say to the Conservative Party, John, you step down. If you do that, I'll come back as a member and I'll run for that leadership race. I'm not joking when I say that. But the odds are he's already backpedaling on the whole blackmail thing.
Yeah.
And he's going to hold on to that because he's desperate. And
so he's got the support of these 24 Liberals, as you counted earlier. There's 24 of them out of all of the MLAs, conservative MLAs, and there's 17 who are actual conservative MLAs. Do you think that you would have a chance? I mean, if you got him to step down, first of all, have you spoken to other actual conservative MLAs about this? And are they willing to step up and put pressure on this guy?
I think that I could stand a chance if they allow the membership to come back. As soon as I left, they went through all the membership and kicked people out. And pretty much told them to pick a side. And I think that those memberships would have to be given time to come back to be able to vote on a new leader. I've heard multiple names that might be interested in leadership going against John. Eleanor Sturkle was one, Gavin O'Donoghue was another, Harman Bangu might end up running. So there's multiple people that are the sharks are circling John as well. Whether or not I come back into that, I think it's the best way going forward. If we can keep that party to survive and function properly with a strong leader, that's the best way going forward for beating the NDP.
Too many Liberals. Too many Liberals. I mean, when you sit in that legislature, Jordan, and you look at these NDP or these Liberals step up and do their questions or their speeches or whatever they're talking about, climate change or the LGBTQ plus or whatever issue is held up to them. Do you get the sense that they actually believe their own rhetoric, or are they just spouting nonsense in order to be a good NDP or Liberal?
I think there's some of them where they're just spouting rhetoric, and then I think there's some of them that are actually really good people. They just have a different perspective, and they don't know how things work. One of the unique things...
I mean, they don't know that there's men and then there's women, and that's it?
I don't think they realize the damage that happens. And like me personally, right now, if my bull isn't going out and doing its job with the cows, I'm going to see the repercussions when it comes to calving season.
Right.
When it comes to changing population to make it so then they might be confused or different, and that population grows in that group, that now means that we're going to have a generational gap that most likely might not have babies. Yeah. Which is a very, very big problem in the future. So when I say that they don't really understand that they've got that rural urban divide, they really don't understand how things work outside of the city. They don't know like
where the food comes from. They don't know that stuff. They don't know about supply chain. They don't know where oil comes from. Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So some of them they've just got a really warped perspective, and it's I've been trying my best to show them that there's a different way of how things work outside of the Lower Mainland. Yeah, and that's my job right now too. Is in opposition, I still have to deal with NDP ministers, and I have to help when there's fires up in my region. I talked to Ravi about BC wildfire up here and getting equipment up to help fight it. And there's a lot of stuff that they don't understand outside the Lower Mainland. You kind of have to help them along with that info because they're the government.
You should get a 93-person bus and do a province-wide tour and show them around and make them work on an actual working farm for a couple of days. Put on the hip waders, go wallow in the crap, right? Go and feed the hogs, go and feed the cattle. birth a calf even. I mean, I don't know. Go work on a fire, or at least get close to an active fire and see how those guys are responding to it. Go check out what's going on in the logging camps. Go and see for themselves, so that at least they come back with some kind of perspective, and maybe they can start opening their minds a little bit. You're right. They are closed-minded. And when you live in a city, it's easy to just go to the store and buy what you need, and go to the gas station and buy what you need. And it's easy to follow along, right? You're hearing all the left-wing corporate media, not just the national news like CTV, CBC. You're also hearing from the local radio stations who are talking about climate change and the big LGBTQ pride parade coming up this weekend. And of course, you want to be a member of that. You want to be one of the cool kids. And so you throw up your hand and say, yay, me. And they don't know about the people, all of those people outside of that area, just like all the big cities, as you say, right?
And I think there's a lot of ministers as well, too, that they get put into a minister position and they have no clue what it's about. And instead, you've got a deputy minister that's pretty much making all the decisions for that. And you've got a level of bureaucracy that's now running your government that's not even elected. And I think that's one of the things, too, is that our MLA should have that lived experience. They should have experience for the minister roles that they're going for. I was going to be the Minister of Agriculture.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I had a town councillor from Gibbons, Alberta on the other night, and her name is Amber Harris. And she was talking about the corruption even at local levels, right? And she said that the CAO of the town pretty much ran the town. And he was the one who told all of the councillors how to vote and why. And I was amazed by that. I thought that people ran for office, whether it's municipal or provincial or federal, because they wanted to make change. They wanted to do good things. And as a councillor, a town councillor, you're living with all those people. You're probably closer to your constituents than any other level of government. And yet the level of corruption in that situation was ridiculous. And I'm hearing from all kinds of councillors all over the country the same thing.
So I don't know, when it comes to the Conservative Party, the other spectrum could be where the Liberals branch off. They could go to that center BC.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Conservatives that are left. I don't know whether or not that party's rebuildable. It's got over $5 million in debt. The stakeholders and staff are intertwined with the Liberals on that too. So who knows? Maybe I might look at a party where I can try and capture the MLAs that don't want to be a part of that. That's
okay. So you got one BC or BC strong. Let's toss a coin.
One BC. I think they're doing their thing right now. But I think if I was to do something, I'd probably be looking at doing something myself.
Right.
Or I might just stay as an independent. I'm not sure yet. We'll see how it works out with the Conservative Party, and then we'll also see what happens with one BC.
It's a shame because as all of this division happens amongst people of common sense values, we're letting the NDP run rampant, and we need to be able to come together. And how difficult would it be, Jordan, to walk into a room with people from 1 BC and Center BC and, people of common sense, shared common sense values, to say, look, we've got to stop all of this bickering and unify ourselves here, because if we don't, the NDP is going to run us right into the ground, right through the ground, right to China.
I think right now, common sense isn't common. Very few people have it now. When you get into politics, you've got personalities that are at play that are probably some of the strongest personalities you've ever met.
Yeah.
And when I say that we need a really strong leader, that's what we need. When it comes to the differences in the MLAs that are elected, they're all strong leaders on their own too. But in order to be able to bring them together and actually have a party function properly, we need that strong leader. And that was one of the reasons why I said that if John stepped down, I would pursue that. And it's not something that I take lightly, but I don't think they're going to step down if they're bringing in people like Gordon Campbell to give them, inspirational liberal speeches, then that's probably going to be the route that they're going to go. One, I'm going to keep on fighting the way that I have been.
There's two things that I would like to say to you. And the first thing is that in my experience, I spent over 30 years doing left-wing corporate media before I saw the light. And the last 5 to 10 years of my radio career, I met a lot of politicians. I had a lot of politicians on my show. And I found many of them to be morons or alcoholics. There weren't actually many leaders. And I was surprised by that, because when you see them in the media, they look, strong and intelligent. And then you meet them in person and you ask them just a basic question. And they're like, what are you talking about? And then you see some of them at cocktail parties and they're wasted by 7 o'clock at night. So there's that. The other thing is, you, to me, after this conversation and the conversation we had earlier today, and everything that I've heard about you from the people I met in British Columbia, tell me that you are a fantastic leader. And that's the impression that I get from you. You are determined and you want to make a difference, and you speak with authority and intelligence. And that's something that people will follow. And the hat doesn't hurt you either, my friend.
I'm trying my best. I came into this humble. I've never been a politician before. I've got the 2 years as regional director, and I'm getting into this. That one thing where I actually really surprised myself was that being a farmer mechanic, I never thought that I'd be a politician. But the more I do it, I'm actually figuring out that I'm pretty good at it. And it should be. When I stand with morals, integrity, and I have the courage to fight the system. I think that's what we need. We need more people to do that, and that's what I'm going to stay pushing.
We got to unite the right, man. We've got to find a way to get those Marxists out, because they're going to wreck this country province by province. Jordan, thank you for joining the show tonight. Really appreciate you taking the time, and I'd love to have you back anytime, man.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great.
Excellent. All right. We'll be right back. I do have a couple more things I want to talk to you guys about. And Jordan, thank you. We'll talk to you again soon. Right. So we've got the extension coming up tonight, and the extension tonight includes a great piece that I discovered this afternoon for you, All Access Nighthawks at shadowdavis.com. And by the way, if you're having trouble signing into the website on your device, remember that it is a website, not an app. So here's what you do. People who can't find the sign-in form on their phones, here's what you do. Your phone is vertical, you turn it horizontal, and then the entire website will show up 16 by 9. From there, you can sign in, username, password, all of that, and you can watch the All Access extension every single night. Starts after the main show on social media on shadowdavis.com. And also, I ask that you join the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. That's where we do our chatting while the extension is on. So, masculinity. There's a lot of people who are telling me, and I've noticed this myself, that there seems to be less masculinity in the world today than there was even 5 to 10 years ago. And I would tend to agree with that. Is it because of social pressures? Is it because of toxic masculinity, that big push years ago, the Me Too thing? Does it make men less male in their characteristics? That could be a contributing factor, maybe a big contributing factor. But what about physically? Are they putting something in the water? Is there something in the air that's making men less masculine? We're going to investigate that tonight on the extension with you All Access Nighthawks at shadowdavis.com. And don't forget also, if you are an All Access member, you can go back anytime you want, and watch any show you want from the last year and a half. They're all there. You don't have to watch the extension live. You can watch it tomorrow. You have access. You are all access at shadowdavis.com. And coming soon for All Access members, the Shadow at Night store. You're going to be able to buy hoodies and hats and mugs and all of that great stuff that I've been designing behind the scenes for the past week. Okay, this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. Let me take Jordan's name off the screen because he's no longer on with us, and we'll just go with me. There we go. All right, so a lot of people don't seem to understand. I'm not talking about you guys in particular because you know, but we've all been looking for a way to talk to our normie friends about the agenda, whether it's Agenda 2030 or Agenda 2050, the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Who is Mark Carney really? Like I said the other day in a reel on social media, he seems like a reasonable guy, folksy, likable. And people go, yeah, that's good enough for me. Plus, he says he's going to elbows up, fight the United States. He's going to make Canada the strongest economy in the G7. He's going to strengthen our military. I like this guy. He's implementing a lot of the Pierre Poilievre policies from the election campaign, it seems like. Will he build a new pipeline? Probably not. He's toying with the idea right now. So, like I said, we're looking for a way to expose this guy for who he is, to make people understand. I went golfing with a very good friend of mine yesterday morning, and I told him about the 2035 EV mandate, the Liberal EV plan to completely and totally get rid of gas-powered cars by 2035. You will not be able to buy a gas-powered vehicle in Canada by 2035. He said, what are you talking about? I said, dude, this is a law that Trudeau put in when he was the prime minister, and Mark Carney's not going to repeal it. This is staying put, aside from the fact they're not going to build any new pipelines, let's be honest. Mark Carney is a net zero zealot. Listen to the man.
About ESG labels or sustainable labels. And that, again, is one of the reasons we're having this ruthless, relentless focus on net zero, because in the end, look, we can't stabilize the climate unless we get to net zero. And it's a simple, these are hard numbers. Your emissions are either A or B. They're going up or down. And if they're going down, are they going down consistent with the science? We anchor it in the science, the same science the UN and others use for the 1.5 degree objectives.
No. There are scientists who say that. Yes, sure. But there are scientists who have been muzzled. Remember that big muzzling the scientists thing from the Trudeau campaign in 2015? Anyway, there are scientists who do not agree with that. I have put them on this show. They say, no, there's no climate emergency. It's ridiculous. They've got the science as well. Let them have a debate about it. But no. One side gets shut down, muzzled, canceled. The other side is allowed for their narrative to continue. Why? Because they're the ones who are funded by the big green energy companies, which is becoming $1 trillion industry, more than 1 trillion. It's huge. It's amazing. And Mark Carney is one of the guys behind all of that. Look at this. Show your friends this. This is on the Liberal.ca website, the Liberal Party of Canada. 100% zero emission car sales by 2035. You got a friend who belongs to a classic car club? You tell that guy or woman, you say, oh, and by the way, in 10 years' time, you're not going to be able to drive this car. It's not going to be illegal, but you won't be able to buy gas for it. You will not be able to find replacement parts in this country because they probably won't allow them. You won't be able to repair the vehicle if something goes wrong with it. It'll sit in your garage forever. There will be no more Sunday night parades down the main drag in your city or town. You will not be able to show off your beautiful classic car because 100% zero emission car sales by 2035 in Canada. Almost a quarter of our emissions come from the transportation sector, and half of these emissions come from the cars and trucks that get Canadians around every day. What are they going to do when it's minus 35 on the prairies, minus 25 in Ontario and Quebec, when it snows for 3 or 4 days in Vancouver? That's why we launched the IZEV program in 2019 to provide purchase rebates of up to $5,000 to Canadians who want to get behind the wheel of an electric vehicle and help build enough charging stations that you can drive from St. John's to Victoria in an electric car. And this June, we set a mandatory target that all new light-duty cars and passenger truck sales to be zero emissions by 2035, accelerating Canada's target by 5 years. To help us shift to zero emissions vehicles faster, a re-elected Liberal government will double down to attract investments in jobs in manufacturing zero emissions vehicles in Canada through the $8 billion Net Zero Accelerator. Even as major vehicle manufacturing companies are backing out of the EV because there's no market for them. People don't want them. Doesn't matter to Mark Carney. Invest an additional $700 million to add 50,000 new electric vehicle chargers and hydrogen stations to Canada's network. This is what they are doing. This is all part of Agenda 2030. It's all part of Agenda 2035. It's all part of something called Agenda 2050. But don't take my word for it. Here's Tiana.
So a lot of people are talking about Agenda 2021 and Agenda 2030, but their end game is actually something called Agenda 2050. And each agenda is meant to break down Agenda 2050 into smaller steps, give out some of the tasks to NGOs, which are non-government organizations, in order to achieve their final task. Now, if you're asking what's their final task of Agenda 2050, well, it's something called Project North America 2050, where they want to take the entire middle of North America, push everyone into 15-minute cities, and restrict your movement and your freedoms. And a lot of people don't seem to grasp that, and the fact that Mark Carney is part of the UN Global Envoy, and that is exactly how they're going to achieve this mission, by telling you that they need to basically decrease human consumption in order for all of us to survive. And this actually goes back to the memorandum that Henry Kissinger wrote in the early 90s, that I did a video on. But let me just show you what I found. So this all goes back to the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, and it was during this time that the Wildlands Project was to be implemented. Pause to read, I don't want to get taken off. And that is where Agenda 21 comes into place, where they will target mega regions in order to get people to move out of these regions into cities, so mainly rural folks, that will be pushed into cities to make 15-minute cities. Now, they are behind schedule even for the Agenda 2030, but it is basically said that at least 30%, but as much as 75% of the land needs to be recovered from the people in order to allow it to heal with biological things. Now, what's interesting is that this area is very rich in resources. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up the Y2Y project. It's Yellowstone to the Yukon. Now, when the NDP was in power in Alberta for the 4 years, they tried to actually take that piece, the Yukon to Yellowstone initiative. However, the Albertans fought back, and they didn't manage to get that, but they did manage to get the northern BC part and the Yukon part into the agenda already. And that's where you get the Agenda 2050, where basically nothing natural can remain. All of our human rights will be taken away, and transhumanism will be pushed greatly. Now, I did a video on transhumanism as well. It's somewhere in the copious amounts of videos that I have. But I also did a huge video on Kissinger's memorandum, and it all involves Depop, if you know what I mean. Then you have the Deagle report, which is also stating that the populations will drop by a lot of percentages by the year 2050. And everything seems to be centered around we will not have enough resources in order to project the growth of humanity, and in order for people not to go crazy in case there is a lack of resources. So instead of governments going just for land, they're going specifically for resources, which is why Alberta is being pushed so hard to basically shut down everything that it needs in order to survive, to push people out of these rural areas and into cities so that they can trap everybody into the 15-minute city cycle. Now, I can go into a lot more details, especially with a lot of the Depop coming up as a theme or a pattern in all of these agendas, and including the Georgia Guidestones. I mean, I can do a whole connection thing on it, but I think a lot of people need to be aware of what's coming for Canada because of Mark Carney, who he is and who he stands by.
Right. So you look up Y2Y project and you find wildlife corridors, which is what they've been establishing. Like Tiana was saying, in British Columbia, Alberta has actually rejected it for now. But I know in Manitoba it's happening. It's absolutely happening in the central west part of the province, because I know some farmers there who are telling me this. And they have no say in it. These are municipal councils who are enforcing these bylaws in these RMs. So it's not coming from the province. Well, maybe it is, quietly behind closed doors. It's not coming from the federal government that we know of, even though Chrystia Freeland was in Alberta trying to push this agenda. I think it was Grand Prairie a few years ago. That's where she was met by our buddy who gave her what for in the lobby of that hotel. Remember that? But she was there for this region. Y2Y. Here's your website, y2y.net. Go look it up. And then we've got something called the Wildlands Project. The Wildlands Project returns. This is from AmericanStewards.us. Look at this map. This map shows you what they want to establish by 2025. It's in red, it's in yellow, and it's in green. This is in the United States, obviously, so that will expand to Canada as well. Can you see any green in there? There is. I can't make this any bigger, I'm sorry to tell you, but there is green in here. These would be the mega cities. There's one here. There's one here. There's one up here that goes across the border from Seattle to Vancouver. There's one here, Toronto, Montreal, Winnipeg, Edmonton, Calgary, Winnipeg, Minneapolis corridor. So here's what the red stands for. You are absolutely not allowed as a human to be in the red area. That is absolutely verboten. For the yellow areas, you have to have a special government permit, but you can be in the green areas that you can't even see. And if you want to see this map and what it means, go to AmericanStewards.us. Look at even the Globe and Mail, the left-wing corporate media, is talking about how life is going to go in Canada for the next 10 years. Canada, prepare for a decade of thrift and lower living standards. It's coming, man. We've got to start standing up now, or it's game over, man. Game over. Is that Bill Paxton from Aliens? Game over, man. Game over. And, you know, I'm trying to bring a little bit of levity to the situation here, guys, but come on. What are we going to do about this? I know it's easy to sit there and say, but nothing looks different. Everything still kind of looks the same. I've still got my cottage. Yeah, there's some weird bylaws going up there, but nothing really bad yet. And you got the normies out there just kind of walking around like everything's okay, like it was in 1987. It's not. Go to any mall. Go to any grocery store. Go to any bank. You know, I was at the bank today. I had to get something attached to my card. And I went to the ATM. And the first thing that flashed across the ATM, the automated teller screen, was that pride flag. First thing, whoa. And I realized that my credit card was not attached to my debit card, and so I had to get it attached. And so I went to one of the tellers. I'm standing in line with all of the other old people. And I looked at the tellers. There were 5 of them, 2 of them working the same window. 4 were brown, and 1 was white. And the white person was probably about a 65 to 68-year-old woman. And I went, wow. Just wow. You go to any government establishment in your province, whether it's vehicle licensing, if you live in a monopoly province like Manitoba or Saskatchewan or BC, it's probably going to be all brown people there too. You go to a casino, government-run casino, hey, guess what? Who's running that? All the employees. Not old stock Canadians, that's for sure. Go to any liquor store in a province that's run by or that runs its liquor operations. You're going to see the same stuff. Great replacement. It's what it is. We got to stand up and start saying these things. And if we don't, we're complicit. We're complicit. We're letting it happen. We're doing it to ourselves. I want to leave you guys with a little bit of good news here. Not that. That's not good news. That's bad news. Here's the good news. In the United States, the Supreme Court has ruled in a 6-3 decision in the Medina versus Planned Parenthood case that state Medicaid programs can defund Planned Parenthood. Huge breakthrough for the cause of life. Planned Parenthood should absolutely not receive a dime of taxpayer money. Now, if these court cases keep going this way, and because the Supreme Court ruled on this today in our favor, I believe they will. Whoops. I believe they will. Planned Parenthood is who is running the LGBTQ book plan in all of our public schools and libraries. It's been traced to Planned Parenthood Canada, even though it's not called Planned Parenthood Canada. It's called Action Canada. Goes by a different name in Canada, but it's still Planned Parenthood. And if Planned Parenthood is getting defunded left, right, and center, they're not going to be able to keep funding these projects, especially in different countries like ours. So they're going to have to find their funding from somebody else. And if they do, it will be significantly lowered, or they won't have any money at all. And that's why you're not seeing as much LGBTQ this year, because USAID defunded all of that crap. Not just in the States, but worldwide. Plain and simple, brothers and sisters. That's it for the show tonight. The extension begins in 2 minutes on shadowdavis.com for the All Access Nighthawks. For the rest of you, I love you all, and I appreciate you all. Catch you again Monday night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. And like I said, Nighthawks, I'll see you in 2 minutes on the website.